Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new week of Blumira Briefings, your weekly download of the most important headlines for your security practice with the context that'll help you put it into action. I am Zoe Lindsay. I'm joined by a couple of my teammates here today, Jake Ouellette.
Yeah, hey everybody. Just getting back from a nice vacation and a break from Blumira Briefings, but super happy to be back and talking about security again.
Welcome back. Glad to have you back, too. And Mike Toole.
Hey, everybody. Pumped to be here as well.
And let's go ahead and dive in because we've got a ton to cover today. So starting as we always do with our critical update stories, WatchGuard issued a fix for a 9.3 CVSS rated Firebox firewall vulnerability. This is CVE 2025-9242. It was a high severity out of bounds write vulnerability affecting the Firebox T15 and T35 firewalls, and could allow unauthenticated remote attackers to execute arbitrary code. It affects devices that are running Fireware OS versions 11.x through 2025.1, and notably persists even if vulnerable VPN configurations have been deleted. A shout out to researcher Toole, I think. I hope I'm saying that right, Btaol, who is credited with discovering and reporting the issue. Mitigations, there is not a whole lot recommended in the way of workarounds. It says if unable to update immediately, WatchGuard recommends limiting how traffic can access the VPN as a temporary mitigation, but mitigation instructions are to update to patched OS versions as soon as possible. So just start looking at this one. It's been a bit since we've talked about it. Jake, do you want to break down for folks what an out-of-bounds write vuln is and what the risk is if it were to be exploited?
Yeah. Real quick, just before we get into that too, I think this is a good point to highlight the specific piece of advice that they're saying that it persists through deleted VPN configurations. And this is just a good highlight because I feel like we've been seeing these a lot lately and people have been getting recompromised just because they didn't realize I reset a password, I did XYZ, I should be safe. Like if somebody's able to compromise you and say, for example, the VPN is the way that they get in and you disable that. If you've already been compromised, it's possible they could have set up some kind of backdoor access or something along those lines. So just be mindful that you're taking the extra steps, also looking at vendor specific advice, because they may straight out come out like this WatchGuard advice. They might just say hey, double check, make sure, even if you did delete this, you got to do these other things. So just make sure you're following all those steps. And the only reason I bring that up is just because I've been seeing it a lot more lately, where you've got to take extra additional steps on top of just closing the initial access or something. So just as a quick heads up. And then as far as the out of bounds write vuln goes, so the best way I can think, or the way I want to talk about how an exploit like this, an out of bounds exploit. So it's all about memory, and the easiest way to think about it, an example would be kind of like a bookcase. Think of your memory allocation, everything your computer can access is all this one bookcase. And then each individual book in that bookcase is different parts of that memory that can be assigned to a program to use for whatever it needs. And basically an out of bounds write is say, for example, in this bookcase, a program asks for memory space and it gets you get book 1 through 10. You can operate inside these books to use this memory and do whatever you need to do and then give it back when you're done. An out of bound write happens when they're assigned those 1 through 10 books, and then all of a sudden they're able to write to book 12 or book 15. They're able to write outside of that space that they're given. And there's many different ways that this can be done, and different things that specific examples of different ways this can be abused and stuff like that. But long story short, it's really just making it so that people, attackers, can take their own code and put it into that overflowed space. So basically you can, that's why they're so dangerous, because you can almost put anything you want in there and have it run. So it can usually lead to things like arbitrary code execution, memory corruption, privilege escalation, remote code execution, that kind of stuff. And it can also cause, I think memory corruption alludes to this a little bit, but it can also cause your machines to just be very unstable. Sometimes when people are developing malware, they get the first inkling that they can do something is they get a system to crash, and then they can eventually refine it more and make it so they can get that space so they can use it and start running code. But sometimes that's as far as they get, and they'll release that as a proof of concept. And that'll be like your denial of service or something like that. So it's just as bad. I mean, not just as bad as remote code, but it can be damaging even if they aren't able to run their own code inside that memory.
Yeah, it's like
great breakdown.
It's always good to remember too, like especially on hardware devices and appliances, they don't have the same traditional like sandboxing that most OSs do, right? So like if you think of kernel mode, right, like there's protections in place. These are very specifically built devices that are built to go like fast and be like very cheap's not the right word, but like very efficient, right? So they just like the incentive isn't there to have extra memory space, right? So if you can get one of these out of bound writes, like you're writing straight into the kernel level of the devices most of the time, and that's how like these backdoors just persist. It's not that they're writing to a config file or whatever. It's like they're straight up writing into memory and they're changing the image of the device to put their code in there. So always good to remember, and that's why a lot of the times, the fixes just update because you have to blow that whole image away.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like you're in these kinds of like overflows and these kinds of attacks, we're working in memory. Usually you're outside. I mean, you're outside of like any kind of like user land space.
Yeah.
You're just like at that point you are the system. You do what you want. Like there's nothing really stopping you if you can get that stuff executed.
Well, unfortunately, following the theme of extremely low level, base level execution, Takeover, we've got a story about SonicWall releasing a Rootkit busting firmware update following a wave of attacks. This is a firmware update to remove OVERSTEP Rootkit malware deployed against fully patched but end-of-life SMA 100 appliances by the threat actor group UNC 6148. This comes, again, after months of security incidents, including an Akira ransomware campaign, brute force attacks on cloud backup services, and various credential stealing campaigns. Google warned in July of this year that UNC 6148 had been exploiting these SMA 100 appliances. OVERSTEP modifies the appliance's boot process to maintain persistent access and to steal sensitive credentials. This is targeting the SMA 100 series, including SMA 210, 410, and 500V. Brute force attacks have been reported against SonicWall Cloud Backup Service for firewalls as well. And Rapid7 analysts previously warned that Akira was exploiting SSL VPN misconfigurations in addition to a year-old CVE. So this is being tracked under CVE 2024-4766, CVSS 9.8. That was the Akira ransomware vulnerability from last year. We will share a link to the article that includes SonicWall's advisory and goes back to that cloud threat intelligence report from Google's threat group. And so mitigations, well, you want to install that firmware update patch. There's no recommended workarounds. Just make sure to install the patch. So I guess to kick us off here, it's been a rough year for SonicWall admins. You had Rootkit stories in July, ransomware campaigns in August, cloud backup breaches in September. I forgot to mention a statement from SonicWall said that thieves access firewall configuration data belonging to, quote, fewer than 5% of their firewall installed base. So other than trying to get off end-of-life hardware, what are some recommendations that admins can do to try and get in front of these future issues if they aren't in a position to upgrade or make a move right now?
Yeah, so this one could be kind of tough because with this end of life software, sometimes you'll get like the nice little like tosses from the vendor being like, we don't officially support this, but we'll give you like some kind of like special sauce. Someone, we happen to get the intern on this, is really easy to patch. We'll just send you a nice little, like, you can't expect those all the time. So it's like nice when you get them, but yeah, it's patching is out the window. In terms of like end of life hardware, I think like you said, like it's been a rough year for SonicWall admins. It's been a rough year for like a lot of like, I mean, it's
That's
always
fair.
been rough years for like
That's fair.
edge
Decades.
devices, like VPN configurations, and a lot of times, like the biggest thing to think of or like the highlight is like a lot of times these big actors, they're so big they have to be efficient with how they target things. They're not going out and like specifically finding one company to target. They're doing like mass scanning, and then from mass scanning they'll figure out their targets from there, and a lot of it's automated. So if you can just take like just mostly simple steps of like figuring out how you can prevent your device from like being shown publicly. That could be something like taking off the like management access from public access, put it behind a VPN, put it behind something, disable it entirely, and you can only access it from within a network. Like that's, like I said, that's typically how these attackers are finding these things, is by doing mass scans. So the most, whatever you can do to like kind of like hide yourself from those scans is probably like your first step of like your easiest step of trying to get off of those automated and getting off of those like alerts to tell like these attackers to like focus more on you, because then it takes more effort on their part to like find you and continue like attacking from there. And then past that, if you've already hidden all that and you've got your management behind everything, like start going a little bit further, see if you can restrict management access to specific IPs. You should enable logging if you on these end of life devices. Like make sure you've got as much logging as possible. You're sending it to a SIM. You're sending it somewhere where you can regularly review it and got alerts on it. And just stay informed as well. If you know you have end of life devices, maybe set up like some kind of like process where you're checking their vendor, like the SonicWall specifically, like they've got PCert. So just like maybe you make it a regular process where you review their alerts or notifications like weekly or something like that, or maybe that's too much, but just like kind of make it a regular process to keep an eye on like what's going on, so that way if something does happen you'll be on top of it. But yeah, just try to get into the mindset of the device being compromised already. What would happen if somebody got on the device? What access would they get to? It's all about like reducing that and like mitigating your risk.
Yeah, I'll build the layers in there, right? Like, don't just have a single box that connects to the internet, because that's, it's a rough day. I think these are smaller devices too, right? So like you're probably going to see these more in branch offices, and that gets tough, right? If you have a hub and spoke network, right? Like you've got these things out small places, or like retail's huge for that, right? Like they have a million stores that all connect back to a single network. Keeping track of these is tough, and like inventory and asset management, it goes a long way. It's like pretty wild, just knowing what you have, what software's on it, right? So that you can be ahead of this stuff. Like it's very, I could see a situation where it's very easy to have end of life devices and you didn't even know, right? Like you would have taken care of it, but you just didn't know. So yeah, keep that in mind.
Moving right into our most changed trends of the week. Once again, these are taken from Blumira's platform, and these are not the top trends of the week, which are relatively static week to week. These are the greatest increases or decreases in activity over the last week or two. So we can see early emerging trends or potentially interesting emerging trends. Looking at threats first, that's our category for where we have a high degree of confidence that it represents a live and active threat in the environment. We've got dump lsas.exe memory using comm services, internal reconnaissance across all connections, a low threshold, silence indicator of dual use software, indicator of compromise sweep 30-day, and a Citrix NetScaler indicator of compromise for CVE 2023-3519. And Jake, I bet you looked up which CVE that was, because I did not double check before.
Yeah, I did. I don't remember exactly which one it was specifically, but I looked at our detection for it just to remember. I think this is one that I actually built. But I believe, yeah, I think this was a like a path traversal, some kind of like, maybe not path traversal, but it was like a weird HTTP request or something along those lines. But yeah, it goes to show like our last point about like edge devices being constantly attacked.
Mass
But yeah,
scanning.
go ahead, Mike.
Oh no, I was just saying it's a great point for just like the mass scanning that's happening.
Yeah, definitely. And then there's a few other ones I wanted to highlight here. I wanted to also just briefly the dual use software. So I believe that's like a quote unquote like a replay detection from Silence specifically, and they just a quick like definition on that. The dual use is usually something they define it as something that's like can be used for malicious and also non-malicious. So this is kind of like falls into the line of like a potentially unwanted application or potentially unwanted program. Same kind of like PUP, PUA, those kinds of things. An example of that would be like Ping Castle or something that can definitely be used legitimately and safely and is used for defenders, but can also be used for attacking and malicious purposes. So just to put a little bit of a definition on that one. But yeah, I was actually really interested to see a lot of the threats this week. There are some big ones that I don't really see that often. The first one that caught my eye was the indicator of compromise sweep 30 day. That one is super valuable, but we don't see it going off all that often. I think just because it is kind of high fidelity, we don't like for our customer base, maybe they're just not hitting the kind of indicators that we're looking for. But that one's based off of a threat feed. And it is interesting to see. I think that one specifically, I looked up the finding. It looked like it was a command and control beacon IP address. So that would be definitely something worth looking into. And then other ones that I saw that I liked were the Kerberos attack behavior, a honey token interaction. That's one of the fun detections where we just leave a little landmine behind for red teamers and attackers to run across, and then the alert gets thrown off for that Kerberos attacking. And then the dump Active Directory database with the NTDS util. That one is super interesting just because, I mean, you can do it legitimately, but a lot of times threat actors will use this NTDS util to basically, they take all of your Active Directory and puts it in like one little nice, easy to exfiltrate file, and they get that stuff out of your network so they can go and use it later on. So again, like I alluded to in the beginning of this episode, like just think about the things like if you see that detection go off and you did get breached, at that point, I would probably consider all of your Active Directory stuff, like all your information compromised. So then in order to kind of protect yourself against getting recompromised, you got to think about like what passwords you got to rotate and just consider at that point, everything's gone and they've got everything in your Active Directory. But yeah, that's another big one.
Going to suspects, which is concerning activity, though it does not rise to the level of confidence that we designate it as an active threat. So this could be routine, but also is indicative of patterns that can be common in the course of an attack. We've got a Cisco umbrella, continuous command and control traffic blocked, Carbon Black, potentially malicious executable file, CVE 2021-40-444, MS HTML remote code execution artifacts, a Mac OS appearance for suspicious PL util activity. And let's see, we've got a 1Password vault export event, bash or ZSH history manipulation, a suspected web shell interaction. Jake, what step jumped out at you from this list?
Yeah, a couple honorable mentions. I don't really need to go too further into detail, but the first one is a WinRM remote code execution via WSM prov host. So that one's just to keep an eye on. We see that one happen, like it actually alerts a lot on like actual breaches and like red team pen testing exercise, that kind of stuff. So that one's a good one to keep an eye out for. Again, that is one that could technically be triggered by a legitimate like administrative activity. So if it's something you do normally in an environment, you can kind of start to put in filters to whittle that down. But that is a super valuable one that we see going off during breaches. And then the 1Password one I wanted to call some attention to because that is one of our newer detections. We got that out in the last month or so. But that one specifically is for one password vault export event. We've seen some attackers do that to just basically kind of the same idea with the Active Directory one I just talked about, like just dumping all of your data outside to get it out of that vault, and then usually it's transferred elsewhere. This can also be a good like just overall like operational, because even if it's not malicious, you've got a user exporting all their vaults. Maybe they're looking to do that to move to another like non-managed password manager, or something else, like taking everything out of their vault and maybe dumping it into like an Excel spreadsheet that's like way easier for them to use. So just like it might not be a malicious, but it's definitely worth like just keeping in mind, like, why is that person doing that? That's worth kind of thinking about. The two bigger ones that I wanted to maybe not get so in the weeds, but I wanted to call out is the Mac OS PL util activity. We don't see a whole lot of Mac OS detections going off. But this was an interesting one, and I wanted to call it out because some people might not be aware. But the PL util utility itself is used to modify like plist files, and those files can be modified to do things like attackers will use to like gain persistent and execute malicious code. But yeah, it's all about like basically being able to set programs that run at login, that kind of stuff. So if somebody's not usually modifying their plist files, and that could be suspicious activity. And then the last one I wanted to highlight is the $C admin shared discovery. That's another one that's kind of goes off during attacks that we see a lot. One thing to be on the lookout for in that specific detection, if you have like you get that detection, you're looking at the matched evidence. Some of the things that are going to start throwing red flags out for me is looking for like commands that are looking to output to a null. So that'd be like the to up caret like greater than. That's like the command prompt way to basically output stuff and drop it. Doing anything with like temp folders or temp files or batch files, so .bat extensions, and then anything with like randomized file names. So if you have something like a whole bunch of random letters, numbers, .bat, usually that's something worth investigating and getting eyes on, because that's typically how threat actors are abusing that admin share discovery and how they're abusing those admin shares.
And finally, our risks category. Again, this is more on the proactive side. This is typically less than best practice configurations or practices that we want to raise awareness on because they could potentially be exploited, but it's easier to fix beforehand. And this one is interesting. A lot of times in our emergent trend charts, it's going from starting from zero. It's a new appearance of activity over the last 2 weeks, either first appearing or seen and then not appearing in the last 2 weeks. This week in our risk category, we've got trending both upwards and downwards in frequency. So we've got a new indicator for mass deletion of Microsoft 365 objects, and a big jump in disabling of MFA on Azure AD users. Then a drop in Linux unusual file attribute actions, a moderate increase, a pretty decent sized jump, 75% jump in SharePoint, 500 or more file deletions in 15 minutes. A jump in elevation of Exchange admin privileges, as well as admin role change in Google Workspace, and a jump in Linux Chmod 777 file permissions, but a drop, almost equivalent drop, in Mac OS Chmod 777 file permissions. And then finally, another matched pair. We had a drop in G Suite external document shares, and a commensurate increase in 365 off outside of Canada.
Yeah, the ones that stuck out to me, I mean, it's hard not to look at this list and realize that like most of them are either Google Workspace or Microsoft 365 Azure. So just goes to show like all those risks that those cloud infrastructure could pose. But one of the ones I wanted to call out was just the unsafe file permission 777 for both Linux and Mac OS. I think I've talked about it before, but I just wanted to like kind of reiterate the 777 specifically gives like full read write execute access for all users. So while that's a useful permission to put on some things, it's just you want to make sure that it's being put on there for good reason. Basically, that kind of permission being set on something means that anyone can do anything they want with it, whatever you happen to sign those permissions on, and especially if it's a directory. So just be mindful. There are certainly cases where you want to use it. But yeah, just one of those things like, hey, you might want to just double check that we understand you did this, but maybe you want to either kind of like close it back up when you're done, or at least you can know that like, hey, this is a folder that just needs to be left open, or this is a file that needs to be left open. But yeah, just a good one to kind of red flag, keep an eye on.
Yeah, I like to tell people, especially with chmod, 777 usually comes from, I don't know, I'm trying to get it to work. But you can also just like work your way up, right? If you look at the chmod, I don't even like to use the numbers because it's just more confusing to me. I mean, there's, you can give it specific read, right, permissions via the command line. Like it's really dumb, but read the man page for chmod. 777 is not your friend.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of those times like at MSP used to work at, just like setting up printers for scanning or something. Like, well, I'm just gonna do domain admin. It's like, yeah, like that happens more often than you'd think. And there's plenty of stories to tell you that is exactly how threat actors abuse things. So same idea, just using the most privileged thing to get the least privileged thing done. Just like Mike said, work your way up and slowly figure out what actually needs to be enabled. And there's also some vendors that just like have these really weird requirements. Sometimes you have to double check their homework and be like, are you sure you need that access? And if they really do, just like question why they need that.
It's funny you both said that. I was tempted to make the joke as frequently seen in poorly written tutorials, right? Like, so our next story, general security news. ENISA confirmed ransomware attack against Collins Aerospace's automated check-in systems, which caused some widespread disruptions across Europe starting Friday on September 20th. This affected major EU airports, including London Heathrow, Brussels, and Berlin. Airports had to fall back to manual processes, in some cases using handwritten boarding passes, and others iPads and laptops. There were 60 flight cancellations at Brussels Airport alone on Monday, and only 42% of flights were departing within an hour of the scheduled time. Collins is owned by RTX, that's RTX Corporation, not the line of GPUs, and provides automated check-in systems for multiple European airports. Law enforcement involved in investigating the ransomware attack. The origin is not disclosed as of when I did our prep notes. There was a Bitkom survey of 1,000 German companies, and which found that ransomware was the most common cyber attack that they were facing. 1 in 7 having paid the ransom. That's an interesting stat, I think. And recent months have seen multiple cyber attacks, including a Jaguar Land Rover production pause. So seems to be a growing trend in Europe right now. I think all things considered, 60 out of 550 flights, as the number that was shared for Brussels cancellations, still close to 90% operational. Adaptation to a critical system failure like this, I think, could have gone worse. Would we say falling back to iPad check-in or even handwritten paper boarding passes, is that a sign of inadequate failover planning, or is it comprehensively planning for the potential of not having any digital access?
I think honestly it is pretty good. I always like to be like the optimist. Like I always like to be like, yeah, you did a good job, because security is hard for everybody. Although I am just coming off a vacation where I did have to fly, so I am a little salty about flying. I feel like the 90% operational is usually like that's like a normal operating efficiency. Like the 60 lost flights that they had, like that sounds like about normal for day to day. I also read through this article, and I was a little confused at first. It seems like the information's kind of all over the place. I found one that said 217 flights have been canceled. I mean, I know the 60 figure was just for Brussels, but we've got a few different numbers coming out. That could be across maybe all of the places. I don't know, but it seems like nobody's really got a solid idea of like the actual impact. And then also like, not to say that like 60 out of 550 flights like made it, but there's also delays and stuff like that, and that could impact like your trip after, or like wherever your connecting flight is. So this is probably like a rippling effect. Just because those 60 were canceled doesn't mean it didn't have like a bigger effect. I also thought this was a bigger impact in terms of like what actually happened. So after reading the article, it looks like just the check-in procedure and like the bagging, like the check bag procedure and like check-in, all that was what was actually affected. And then like people actually getting on the flights and check and doing all that stuff, it seemed like that was not impacted. I could be wrong. So I think like they say they went back to iPads and like papers and laptops. It sounds like they probably just like went to their site and did the check-in like you'd normally do, like the 24 hours before you fly. So this is like, there's all sorts of information going around on this. But yeah, overall, I think they did a good job. I think the most important thing is like communication, because like with airports and planes and these big systems where you have to service like a lot of people and you've got a lot of things going on, it can be difficult probably to get even to where they managed to get to get the iPads and the papers. Like I commend them for being able to like communicate and get, at least it seems like, mostly everybody on the same page and keep things moving. So yeah, probably could have been better, and hopefully they'll use this as a learning opportunity. But yeah, certainly, like you said, could have been worse.
Yeah. Sounds like this might have affected. From what I read, it's very similar to like checkout kiosks, right? Like point of sale systems. So the software was affected, but it like had a hardware component that they relied on. So like it is huge that they were able to go back to like paper. Um, I mean, that doesn't happen unless you have like failover plans, right? So I'm sure it would have been way worse. And especially in the EU where their airports are very like reliant on each other, right? You fly into Heathrow and then you like hop through Germany. And so the cascading nature of this was like pretty bad from what I've heard. Yeah, it's like a good reminder that, everybody checks their third party vendors for, what security controls do you have in place? But you definitely need to think about it in the availability as well. And like, what if they're gone, right?
Mike, I know you wanted us to pull this story to take a look at. So I think it's a good example of this was a targeted attack on a single vendor being used within the airport, and it had this level of disruption. So certainly it's not just Collins Aerospace that was feeling the pain of that attack. And it's definitely something where there can be not just the immediate impact of a ransomware attack, but the longer lasting impact that it has with trust with partners and with those that are using the service, right?
Yeah, I think there's like one other big thing that stands out to me that makes me a little nervous is that, especially with Jaguar Land Rover, who, from what I understand, like still hasn't recovered and will be, I think they're projecting like October 1st at this point. It seems like ransomware actors are going back to big game hunting, which is very disruptive. So I am hoping that trend doesn't continue.
Agreed. I was heartened to see the share of ransomware attacks going down, at least in the state of reports, primarily focused on the US this year. So yeah, definitely don't want to see that trend reverse. I don't think that we're going to get to trade out the growth in InfoStealer for growth in ransomware. If there's going to be an increase there, I expect we're just going to keep seeing an increase in both, which is no fun. Man, we had such a fun session last week. So many win stories. Now we're back to reality. Oops, there goes gravity. So now we're taking a look at Microsoft, which patched a critical Entra ID flaw, which could enable global admin impersonation across tenants. This was a critical vulnerability in Entra ID that could have allowed attackers to impersonate any user, including global admins, across any tenant. The flaw scored a perfect 10 CVSS and stemmed from inadequate token validation in the legacy Azure AD Graph API combined with service-to-service S2S actor tokens from the access control service. So again, this could have affected virtually all Entra ID deployments globally. It would bypass MFA, conditional access policies, and not leave an audit trail due to the lack of API level logging. And attackers would have been able to impersonate global admins without any existing access to target organizations. Tokens from one tenant could be used to access any other tenant. And successful exploitation would provide access to all Entra ID connected services, which include SharePoint, Exchange, Azure resources, and more. Microsoft received the report on July 14th and patched it as of the 17th, so no customer action was required for the fix. It's worth noting, not made clear in the headline, this was identified by a researcher. There's not a known exploitation of it at this time. But I mean, let's start, why is the malicious use of S2S tokens could have happened here so potentially concerning? Just heavy sigh. I think that'll just be the quote of the week.
It's, these are some of the worst tokens. We see these abused all the time, right? People get phished or tricked into granting access, and then people are using them to access whatever they want in Azure, right? With very little logging and accountability. And this one, man, it really reminds me of it's like 2015-ish. There was a Android unlock bug where somebody just kept hitting the same button 20 times or something, and it would unlock Android.
Yeah.
It very much reminds me of someone just screwing around in the API and being like, what if I just try to give it a different scope for another company? It really just this just really feels like no one tested for that. Yeah, I don't know. Great on them for patching it fast. But I think that's more an indicator of how serious it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, the service-to-service tokens, they typically have pretty high privilege because they're just designed to allow services to authenticate and interact with each other, and on an autonomous nature. So that also makes it somewhat hard to audit, because even if the logs were there, which who knows if they were, judging on what we're seeing in this article, it's just service to service stuff and principal service accounts and all these other things going on in Microsoft. It's hard enough to discern what license you need for Microsoft 365, let alone what's going on in their logs. So seeing these service to service interactions, good luck trying to figure out which ones are malicious. And it's just, you're just going to get lost in the sea of logs, if there is a sea. I mean, maybe there isn't a sea at all and you've got nothing to look at, in which case you're also in a bad spot. But yeah, all of this is just a bad thing because it combines the worst case scenario of you've got global scope, you've got maximum privileges, and very minimal detection capabilities, if any at all. I commend Microsoft for getting it done quickly, but I was an optimist in my last argument, so I'll be a pessimist here and say it kind of concerns me that it was so fast, because they could have done it fast because it was serious, or they could have also done it fast because it was a whoops, how did that get production? I meant to actually uncomment this line, and maybe it was something that was such an easy fix that they're oh, get that out quick. They got it done fast, but maybe that means it was just something so stupid, so low level that they're we gotta, that's an easy fix, let's just get it done now. So that's my pessimist side this time.
Well, and it's not that there's a unimportant service, but I mean, we're talking about the identity service here, so that's going to have a serious level of impact. So definitely, I think deserves a higher level of scrutiny in testing before release.
I do have a glass half full version of this.
Okay, all right, let's hear it.
I think some nation states probably got some of their tactics burned here, because this is the kind of bug that would be incredibly useful to have in your back pocket, and probably something that people have found.
Yeah.
So it's gone now, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, like, as much as if we all were pessimists on this and absolutely hated, and Microsoft, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? There's no logging. I can't believe you. Like, where are we all gonna go? Like, you're gonna move to workspace? Like, it's just a weird situation. Like, because whenever something like this, if this had gotten like somebody popped to it, like an APT popped it or something like that, like if this was like Kaseya again or something else, those conversations of like, oh, do I move to the other RMM? Do I move to this thing? Those conversations always come up. But unfortunately, with like Microsoft and like you've got all your eggs in one basket, it's like, as much as they do stuff that we hate, it's like, what can we do at the end of the day? Like, we can continue to like say stuff about them, but hopefully we can find like better ways to like prod them to just be better, especially like no logging. That's just, I mean, maybe that's just the detection engineering side of me, but like that's just like I think that's low hanging fruit. That it's a little unfortunate that even Microsoft couldn't get figured out.
What do you mean there's no other options, Jake? I saw people on the internet and they said this is the year of Linux, so everybody can easily make a jump from Microsoft to other services now.
So yeah,
that's
go
okay.
back to Lotus Notes or whatever else we got
Yeah,
in the
right.
back pocket.
WordPerfect, I think, is the fallback plan.
I actually loved Lotus Notes. That dates how old I am, but I loved that software.
Yeah, I think you leaked a little bit your generational experience there, Mike. That's okay though. Well, we had to come back to the GitHub, I guess, series of stories here. GitHub has made a move to tighten their NPM security amid a wave of phishing and malware attacks. They are making major changes to registry security for NPM following recent attacks, including targeted phishing campaigns and over 500 compromised packages containing secret stealing malware. Security lab lead Xavier Rene Correal announced removal of legacy classic tokens and one-time passwords for 2FA. They are implementing trusted publishing practices, which were first used on PyPi's package indexed, which use OpenID Connect to verify packages come from trusted sources with short-lived tokens. Notably, right now, it currently only supports GitHub Actions and GitHub Continuous Integration, Continuous Delivery. Packages are limited to one trusted publisher configured at a time. This is a practice also being used by Ruby Gems and Crates.io for Rust. There were some comments in the article that we pulled from here. One that I wanted to pull out was that OIDC is in and of itself is simply delegating authorization to another platform and doesn't by itself address core issues. So I guess to kick us off, it's encouraging to see the GitHub is putting these changes into place quickly. What are some lessons that admins can take from this sort of trusted publishing approach, maybe to use in their own environment, where we've talked a lot about, configuring limited access, leave permission, and maybe to address their own potentially weak authentication issues.
Yeah, it definitely feels like NPM is getting brought up with the rest of the package repositories in like security baselines, right? Historically, it hasn't been the best, or at least, like they haven't caught up in certain aspects compared to the other repos. So it's good to see that for sure. It definitely is, especially since JavaScript is used literally everywhere. And I think it's good too in the sense that like these are open source repositories most of the time, and NPM has traditionally put the onus on open source developers to do the right thing, or make sure their setup or their CI/CD is secure. So it's great that they're basically bringing everybody in and saying like, here's how you do it, right? Like works with GitHub Actions, right? All of it. You can do it a lot easier, right? limiting the tokens. That's wild that you can have multiple deploy tokens to NPM. Like, I can't even like understand why you would want that. But sure. So that's great. I would, if you are an NPM developer, I would highly recommend getting on board with this setup. It is literally the way everyone does it. So it's good that we're getting away from the, just kind of everybody did the open source way of like maximum choice, but choice paralysis, right, with security. So
Mm-hmm. And that comment from the article, just delegating authorization without addressing core issues, that was a take, that was a statement. I wanted us to kind of share our take on that. Is that something where we're in alignment with that feeling, or was this sort of the right choice here to integrate OpenID Connect as part of the solution to try and solve this problem they've been experiencing doing this management on their own?
Yeah, I actually went back and I found that quote as part of like the bigger thread and discussion, and basically what the person was trying to say was like, it's a really good point. Overall, it's just kind of like, it's it's good that they're enabling it, but just enabling it and doing that OpenID Connect authentication, like just doing that is not going to make things more secure. You have to also configure OpenID Connect itself to be secure, like more appropriately lock down the stuff that you're trying to authenticate with it. And that's true for a lot of tools that we use. Like, you can't just deploy something and expect it to be secure nowadays. Usually you have to be like, okay, I'm going to deploy this and I'm going to do XYZ that's going to help me harden my environment. And that's why they're looking to deploy OpenID Connect, is because it's got those extra little pieces that will allow them to be further, like, we're going to check these boxes. It's going to make everything more secure. So yeah, if they had just rolled it out and done nothing with it, then yeah, that person's right. And that's the point that they're trying to make in that thread. And they basically said, like, you've got to not only deploy it, but you also have to do these other things in the OpenID Connect to make sure that it's actually making things more secure.
And I wanted to make sure, last week, blessedly, you mentioned JavaScript used everywhere, Mike. I had to pull it out for length of our episode, but there was another Chrome update push for the V8 JavaScript engine this past week. So I don't know if we have more to add on that. I think this is this sixth or seventh specifically patching for that this year. But I wanted to make sure that we're able to include a strategy story, like we got into a couple last week. This one is an article on Hacker News, but written by SANS Institute fellow Frank Kim, taking a look at how CISOs can implement effective AI governance. It breaks it down into a few basic steps of understanding how AI is used within the organization, making sure that you're tailoring policies to your organization's speed, and making governance sustainable through monitoring tools and real-world enforcement. He advises CISO should avoid document backward policies in favor of real-world forward approaches. There's recommends model registries to track deployed models, look at update history, and track performance to prevent black box sprawl. Implementing a AI bill of materials, providing visibility into AI model components, data sets, and external services. Building cross-functional committees that include not just IT and security, but legal, compliance, HR, and business units that would be using them. And the policies must be living documents that evolve with leadership changes and embedded AI capabilities and functionality. So I pulled this article, one, because I think SANS is just such a great resource, and any opportunity that we have to give them a boost for folks, I want to try and do that. I also liked that there was some good concrete recommendations in there. We've had a lot of stories about attacks targeting AI, novel attacks, or first time seen in the wild attacks. We've seen recommendations and an understanding of a need for AI governance. And so it's great to see some actual concrete recommendations coming out. I don't think that only CISOs can benefit from this advice. I think that this is going to be useful to all teams that are trying to get a handle on AI used in their environment. So one of the things that the article focuses on, especially around AI, is avoiding the trap of being the Department of No and incentivizing people to work around the stated AI policy. But in some cases, especially with new and quickly evolving tools like AI integrations, would no sometimes be the right answer?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like it's the answer.
Sure.
It's certainly the most secure answer in a vacuum.
It's yeah, it's fun because it's like I definitely feel like we are not in a place where we've figured this out yet.
Yeah.
As an industry, like I don't know, we have maybe 70 to 80% of the tools we need to deal with this, and that's not me being a doomer. That's me living through the 2000s and understanding what web apps were like back then, and we fixed all of that. So, it's not like we won't come up with the tools and like playbooks and understand all the attacks. So saying that, like, you can do all of these things, but until you really understand what you're implementing, I feel like that's the first step, right? Like the first step is understand what the thing is doing, what permissions it has, what it's getting access to, what that data is, and then you can work backwards, right? So all of this policy governance, great, but until you have clear understanding of like what the thing even is, how do you know? Like, I think one of the things they put in there was like an AI bomb, which seems similar to like a S bomb. It's like what's this thing built out of? And that's great, but most AI bugs are logic bugs. So like not necessarily has vulnerable components. It's more in the realm of like I gave it the wrong permissions, or I can trick it to access a thing that it's not supposed to. Not and we literally I would bet like the CVEs for AI right now probably under 50, just because like we haven't had it very long, right? So probably not a tool that's going to be very useful. Maybe it is, but that's probably years down the road. Yeah. So the first step's just like fully understand what you're deploying. I wouldn't buy software that I didn't understand what it was doing, give it access to all my stuff, and then wonder why it went bad, right? Like that's what's happening, and it's the first place to start. And you don't have to say no; you just have to figure this stuff out.
Yeah, in regards to the AI SBOM specifically, to Mike's point, like we're still trying to figure things out, and I wanted to highlight because it's a good chance to say like OWASP has a AI SBOM project, or AI bomb is what they call it, the AI bill of materials, and that's something that they're actively working on. It looks like the first phase or they've got multiple phases, but it looks like they're all the first bit of review is trying to wrap up around November of this year. And then early next year, January, February, we're going to start seeing some things from that, like the actual publication, including, it looks like in their phase 5, they have some promotion and industry engagement. So that's probably where you might start to see like conference people doing like papers on stuff like this, talking at conferences about AI bombs. So I would keep an eye out on that. And if you want to contribute too, I'll make sure to include the link or give the link to Zoe so we can include it. But yeah, they're asking for help. They're asking for a review. So definitely, if you have an interest in helping out with that project, definitely give it a look.
Yeah, that's the kind of tool as well that like once it is implemented, and like if it is, let's put aside the fact that people would lie about what's in there. It definitely can help your team understand what the software is built out of, right, and what it's using, and like the goals and right. So, but it's like alone it does nothing. So let's hopefully we can get this one right. Not so much S bombs.
Right. Well, absolutely. We'll make sure to include that in the resources section of our description for this video for folks to check out. Thanks for shouting it out, Jake. Thanks to both of you for hopping on and sharing some expertise with our audience today. And thank you, audience, for tuning in and watching. We'll be back next Friday with a fresh batch of headlines to fill you in. And until next time, stay safe out there. Bye-bye, everyone.